Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, brought to you by the Capital One Spark Cash Plus card. What could unlimited 2% cash back do for your business? Capital One, what's in your wallet? I'm Jamie Eisenberg, that's Dave Richard, that's Heath Cummings, and we have the start of the week for week number 4. Great opportunity for Jamal Williams taking over for an injured DeAndre Swift. He's expected to be out until at least week 7, and Williams should take advantage of this opportunity in a big way. We saw last week against the Vikings, he was absolutely dominant, 20 carries, 80 yards rushing, scored 2 touchdowns, had 2 catches as well. The Lions have now had 4 games this season where a running back has gotten 16 or more PPR points, and Williams should make it 5 with this matchup against the Seahawks. They've already allowed 2 running backs to score at least 21 or more PPR points. Javonte Williams in week 1, Cordero Patterson in week 2, and I think Williams will continue to dominate for the Lions. This offensive line is playing great. This rush offense has been fantastic, and if the weapons in the passing game are banged up, Williams should lead the way in a big way. You see, we all like him as at least a top 13 running back. Sportsline has him, based on their projections, as a top 17 running back. So whether he's a number 1 running back or number 2 running back, he should be in your lineup. Other starting options for me, a couple of players here that I think have been a little bit disappointing so far. We'll see how they do in week number 4. Specifically, we look at the 2 rookie running backs. They haven't been up to par to where we thought they were coming into the season. Pierce coming off a good game last week against Chicago, I think carries over against the Chargers. And Breece Hall's the interesting one because we just don't know how things are going to go with Zach Wilson taking over under center for the Jets. Where do you guys come out on Breece Hall this week? Confident? Concerned? You share my sentiment that he should be a starter?
No, I'm concerned. And it's really because of Zach Wilson being under center, and we just don't know what that's going to mean for the entire Jets offense. It should be a net positive for them, but the roles of the running backs are in question because he's a downfield passer. He's also mobile himself. So checkdowns that Joe Flacco might have made in weeks 1 through 3 could end up being deep balls to Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, or Zach Wilson runs. I can't keep Breece Hall in my top 24.
The one thing I do think is in his favor is I don't think the Steelers' defense is very good right now, especially without T.J. Watt. And I do think he's the best running back on the Jets. You saw them get him involved, and if there's going to be less running back targets, then I would think they'll probably see more carries shift from Carter to Hall because they want Breece Hall touching the football. He's a borderline number 2 running back. I don't have Carter too far behind him, though. I think both could be good flexes this week.
I think we saw a little bit of the change in the guard. That's at least the hope. He played more than Michael Carter first time this season. I think he's more explosive, and I think this is a game that the Jets surprisingly could win. I know that they're road underdogs, no surprise. But you said it, Heath, this Steelers defense has not exactly played very well. And I think this could be a breakout game for Breece Hall, so I'm excited about it. All right, Dave, let's talk about your starts here. You got Russell Wilson as a guy that you guys differ on. You got Khalil Herbert, Rashad Penny, Terry McLaurin, and David Njoku. Let's talk about Russell Wilson here because he's on the sit list for Heath. So, Dave, make your case for Russell Wilson, then Heath, you can dispute it.
I admit he's battling through some consistency issues, and he seemed affected by the 49ers pass rush last week. Now he's taking on the Raiders, their pass rush, not nearly as dominant as the 49ers. Every quarterback that the Raiders have faced has found at least 20 fantasy points. That includes Ryan Tannehill last week. And Russ has been close to connecting with both Judy and even more with Cortland Sutton. I think he's starting to get there. They're talking about getting in rhythm this week. It felt like it was just a matter of time for everything to kind of become cohesive in Denver, and this is the perfect matchup for it to happen.
Yeah, I don't think the Raiders' defense is necessarily very good, but I don't think the Seahawks or the Texans' defense is very good either, and this offense wasn't any good against them. So I'm just kind of in a show-me mode with this Broncos offense, specifically everybody besides basically Cortland Sutton and Javonte Williams. Russell Wilson's going to have to show that he can be a great passer in this situation because he's not doing it with his legs at all anymore, just 22 yards on the ground all year.
Is there anybody besides Tua that you would start over him that's not necessarily somebody that's been drafted or playing at a very high level?
I would start Marcus Mariota over him. I would start Jared Goff over him if Amon-Ra St. Brown plays.
Okay, so Mariota, Goff over Russell Wilson. Clearly you would start Wilson over
As
those
of
guys.
now, I would. But
why are we starting Rashad Penny knowing that he hasn't exactly played very well through the first 3 weeks?
He's still their guy in Seattle. That's what the playing time tells me and the opportunities that tell me that too. And it's the Lions. That's a terrible run defense. They've given up, I think, 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs in their first 3 games. So I want a piece of that, and I think he's still the best running back in Seattle. Kenneth Walker reminds me of Jonathan Taylor from his rookie year. He's playing with some hesitation right now. And I think Rashad Penny's just a better back for the Seahawks in a game that could actually be a little high scoring. I think that this could be a Seattle offense that puts up a decent amount of points this week, and Penny could get a touchdown there.
He got a little bit of a benefit with Travis Homer being placed on IR, but still, the playing time is
there
still in his favor.
There were still 2 other running backs playing last week.
They were using 4 guys last week. That's the frustrating part is that Penny
still played almost
should
70%
be dominant, but he's got no role in the passing game right now, and he's got to score. If he doesn't score, I think it's going to be a little frustrating. I think he's a good flex, but I don't know if he's necessarily a must-start guy for me. Terry McLaurin is should be the guy in Washington. He just hasn't been the guy in Washington. Is this going to be a game where he breaks out?
Well, he broke out last week. He had over 100 yards, and he didn't even have a catch in the first half.
Yep.
So, listen, I thought the 45-yard catch that he had last week was outstanding, and yes, it was a little bit of garbage time. And who's to say there can't be garbage time this week that falls in McLaurin's favor? And Cowboys' defense is good, and that pass rush is going to be on Carson Wentz. But I like McLaurin's chances to come through. He's had at least 16 PPR points in each of 3 career games against Dallas when he's had at least 7 targets. He's had at least 8+ targets in each of his past 2 games. He's also had a 30-yard catch in each game. So I think he can have a shot at another 100-yard game.
You're way out on him.
They just can't protect Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz won't get rid of the football, and this Dallas pass rush is incredible. So I'm afraid this might be a game where Diggs has more catches than McLaurin does.
Trayvon Diggs, the quarterback there. Yeah, he was sacked 9 times, hit 17 times. The Cowboys just beat up Daniel Jones. I think they hit him 12 times and sacked him 5 times. So this could be another rough day for Carson Wentz. It's going to be tough to see how all these receivers step up, and that's the concern when you're talking about a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. So Terry McLaurin, very different for both you guys there, just in terms of having ranked. Dave, in terms of no, let's move on now to your starts, Heath. I want to talk about Gerald Everett, who you have as a sit. But you have Marcus Mariota as a start, Cordero Patterson as well, Jeff Wilson, Brandon Cooks, and Gerald Everett. Patterson has been good the last 2 of the 3 games so far, coming off a big game last week against Seattle. Is this a good matchup, knowing that the defense for Cleveland may not be at full strength?
I think at the very least it's a better matchup than the one game where he wasn't good against the Rams. I do think that it's pretty clear right now for this Falcons offense. The difference between giving the ball to Cordero Patterson and giving the ball to Tyler Algier is massive, and so they're not going to be able to manage Patterson's touches quite like they intended on. I would expect he's going to get close to 20 touches in this game, and I do think the Browns defense, especially if they don't have Myles Garrett or Jadeveon Clowney, could just be kind of like the Steelers, not a very good defense right now.
2 of 3 games, he's been over 20 fantasy points so far, so hopefully that continues. Jeff Wilson's coming off 2 games in terms of his total yards being okay, over 100 total yards in both. Did have a fumble last week in the loss to the Broncos. This is not an easy matchup, though, but you're still saying to start him.
It's not an easy matchup. Last week wasn't really either, but he had 106 yards against the Broncos. I was encouraged by the fact that he caught 3 passes. He's actually caught every pass they've thrown to him so far this year, and I don't believe that he's going to keep getting 15 to 20 touches and just never score a touchdown.
Fair point.
This is a tough spot for him because that offensive line is in even worse shape this week than it was last week with Trent Williams not there, and this Rams run defense is still pretty good.
It's very good, but it's hard to overlook the work, and we know the 49ers tend to just manufacture production from their running backs. It's a matter of, will he score, will he continue to be involved in the passing game, and how much work will they give Deebo Samuel in a tight game that's probably going to be a little bit on the low scoring side. You had Gerald Everett as a start. Dave, you have him as a sit. Debate Gerald Everett.
They've mentioned that they're going to have to go to more of a short area passing game, and I think that's probably going to go to Gerald Everett, who has not been targeted very far downfield at all. There was room last year in this offense, even with Keenan Allen playing pretty much every game, for Jared Cook to see 83 targets. So I still think 5 to 6 targets per game is still available. This is a good matchup against a bad Texans defense. He's in a group with 7 or 8 other tight ends from tight end 10 to 18. I'm going to go with the guy who's getting targets from Justin Herbert right now.
I get where you're coming from on that, and the problem for me is the 5 or 6 targets and the fact that Keenan Allen is back. And if Allen's back, then that just makes Everett someone that I don't want to go to, and I'd rather take a chance on one of those other tight ends I think has a better chance to score a touchdown. The 5 or 6 targets are nice, but that might only lead to 8 or 9 PPR fantasy points.
I don't want a guy that's only getting 5 or 6 targets. I want a guy that's getting north of that. So, I'll take Robert Tonyan over him. I think you would as well. My other concern would be is that if they have to use him more in some blocking schemes, because he's still a decent blocker, and no Rashawn Slater there. We could see some chips, some opportunities where he's not necessarily running routes. Now all of this will change. I know for you, you're fine with it. If Keenan Allen is out, out, I would start Gerald Everett because they will need him certainly against the Texans. All right.